Did we hear from Roger?
I haven't heard anything. Let me check my email. Nope, got nothing.
This conference will now be recorded.
We have visitors this week. Justin, if I could ask you, did you hire that engineer?
Yeah, I guess it depends on when I was looking. Hired down in August.
Yeah, I remember we were looking for. Oh, you city engineer. I remember. John saw yours.
We need to,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I haven't got you.
we need to figure out where Chuck
Keeps you out of trouble. Helps keep me out of the show.
Huh?
I thought he was gonna sit in the bullpen and run the show. Isn't that the
Well, we
tradition
haven't
of
broken the
city
news.
engineer?
Where am I gonna sit?
You sit up there, right?
Set up here?
Yeah.
Not for planning commission though. For council, there's too many planning commission.
That's true, yeah. This is all the better argument to move upstairs. We can redo it.
Not really just-
No, well, I just,
Yeah, well, that's the
Yeah.
plan. That doesn't know the whole plan.
yeah, it's,
I can't tell them the first week. They might still take them back.
Yeah, no, that's it. You gotta get past that.
Hey Mike, is Roger coming and Mark?
I haven't heard from either
I
one.
haven't heard from either one of them.
So we assume so. Until-
Any of them online?
No, it's just us here in the room online.
well, I was at this. No, yeah, it looks a lot better.
I'm saying we can apply for the next two. Pitchforks and blades. No, I mean, there's stuff that we did. There is.
Mike, are you ready?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
great.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the October 25th City of DeSoto Planning and Zoning. Roll call.
Manson?
Present.
Garrett?
Here.
Templin? Lane?
Here.
Milborn?
Here.
Schultz?
Here.
Huggins? It appears Huggins, Templin,
Templin just indicated he'll be here in a minute.
okay. It appears Huggins and
Two
Templin.
will
Is that
be.
right?
Roger be here.
All right.
He's coming in the door.
Oh, got it.
Whoa, whoa.
Templin?
Here, say here, Roger, here.
Appears Huggins is absent.
Okay. Under general business, item A, approve the planning commission agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the planning commission agenda as written.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Item B, approve minutes of the planning commission meeting held on September 27th, 2022.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Item C, disclosure of conflict of interest. Do we have any?
Chairman Garrett, I'm gonna have to excuse myself from item 5C,
5C?
7A, and 7B.
Okay. Item D, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Okay. Item 4, call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentations for information purposes only. No action will be taken, and there is a 4-minute time limit. Do we have anyone who'd like to come up and address the commission? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 5 is public hearing. We have 3 items on this tonight, and we'll do each one separately. Item A is consider rezoning at 36-520 West 103rd Street from RUR to R3. Fred?
All right, thank you, Chairman. What you have before you is actually 2 rezonings, 5A and 5B are very similar. They are, the first one is 2 tracts, 18.4 acres and 9.3 acres. It's currently owned by the Shanzy Trust. There is a contract on this property by Flint Development. This is their housing part of the company that is managing this project. And the tract is 27.7 acres in total. On the October 6th, the City Council annexed this tract, or these tracts, into the city, and with that, they do need to be rezoned to an appropriate DeSoto category. Developers indicated they want to pursue R3 multifamily in this area. Which went through the normal process, sent out notification letters. Also had a notice in the public, in the paper, the legal record, and also notified or put a sign on the property about the public hearing on the 25th to the Planning Commission. As you know, the RUR designation is for rural type uses. It also serves as a holding zone for lands where efficient provision for public facilities and services needed for development in the county is not viable at the present time. As you know, this property has been vacant. At least the southern tract has been vacant for quite some time. The northern tract of the 2 does have a residence in it, but it is owned by the Shanzy Trust. The allowable uses, and the applicant is asking for R3, allowable uses could include single-family duplexes and multifamily, so you can house 2 R3, R2, and R1 in the R3 zoning district. So you can see we do have the existing zoning map that shows where it is relative to.
That was fun.
That was not fun.
Take 1 second, hold on.
I didn't touch it.
The battery died.
It's the batteries, I
Yep,
believe.
battery's dead. Pause for 2 minutes. The engine said.
Dead battery.
Yep.
See, Bob, you could have waited another 2 minutes and I'd have been on time. Sorry about that.
It's okay. You came in right as the clock was striking 6.
I made it a hard check anyway. I got it beaten really well.
And to watch that back on,
Oh.
everybody jumping out of their skin, huh?
I was trying to find last month's meeting on YouTube, but I couldn't find it.
Let me get, straighten out Brandon, I got it.
Test.
All right, as I was saying, as you can see, the bulk of the existing zoning map shows county designation of RUR. The Flint tract that is to the west of this location is light industrial. The map hasn't been updated. I downloaded this from the Johnson County Ames. We're also in the process of getting our City of DeSoto zoning map updated, so we won't have that for future use relatively in a short time. I go through the review of the zoning compatibility factors. Character of the neighborhood is the first one. As I mentioned, this is a rural area still. It is in transition from rural to employment centers, and I think it's very important right now with the Panasonic announcement and other developments that are happening around DeSoto, that we maintain or increase our housing stock. And certainly R3 is a viable zoning district, which we do need to look at and pursue as development opportunities present themselves. Certainly, we're looking at this in the southwest growth areas. The next public hearing is also for R3 and about a half mile away from this location. Compatibility of the proposed zoning with the permitted therein with the zoning uses of nearby properties. You're gonna hear this a lot tonight. It's R3. It will require some buffering between the rural agricultural districts. It is part of our code as far as when we butt up against districts that are dissimilar, but we do have to have higher and denser buffering. The tract itself is certainly large enough to protect the surrounding rural uses for compatible use. Suitability for the use of which the property is restricted under its existing zoning. Currently, the property could not be used for multifamily, as RUR was in the county. And as I said, the first step in the process is annexation, then a rezoning request. We have talked to the developer, they do have preliminary layouts, but nothing has been formally sent to city staff, so we won't be commenting on any kind of density of use or how many units there might be on the property. However, there is a strong need in DeSoto for additional housing. Like the time the property has remained vacant and zoned, it's been zoned RUR for quite some time. However, there have been, the infrastructure has not been there, so there have to be any kind of marketing activities as far as development. This will be the first one for this area on the east side of Edgerton Road. As you know, Edgerton Road is getting built. Sewers are going in, so it won't be under city sewer. It also, as I mentioned, Edgerton Road's been rebuilt. The water district will be, currently is in the Water District 7's territory. DeSoto Water is nearby, so there has been some discussion if DeSoto might take this, but at this point, it is in Water District 7's, and they've maintained it. Water District 7 has maintained that they do have the capacity to serve this location. Electrical services nearby, Evergy is in the process of upgrading services. Purchased some tract on 95th and K10, 95th Sunflower and K10, and they're putting a substation in that location. Additionally, fire stations being planned for the southern area as well, which would serve this location. The extent of which the uses of the proposed zoning would adversely affect the capacity or safety portion of the street network. As we know, if the changes to Edgerton Road were not being made, proposed changes to 103rd and Lexington were not made, you could make a case that this could be an extremely negative impact, but those things are in place. Edgerton Road is under construction. Other roads are under design and will be part of an approval process that the city will be involved in. It won't become for the planning commission, but certainly something that Public Works Department, Mike and Jet will be involved in as far as reviewing and making sure that the roads meet the capacity for the area. The environmental impacts, I don't see any particular ones that would happened with the R3 zoning, stormwater detention will be required on site. Property, as I said, will be served by home utilities and will likely be addressed during the site plan process. Economic impact, something that we've been just talking about constantly for the last 18 months. There is a significant need for R3 for housing in general, but all districts as well, R3, R2, R1. We certainly could use more of all of those in DeSoto. The R3 district in this area is something that we looked at. And it also does conform to our comprehensive plan. I talked about any kind of negative connotations to this rezoning. Certainly, as you remember, when we annexed the 400-acre Flint tract for light industrial, there are several rural residents nearby. I have received a call recently about from one family nearby just asking about what's going to happen, how's this going, what's transitioning. They didn't seem to be particularly overly concerned, but it was just more informative discussion. I do believe that Brandon did get a request or a call about a protest petition, but as far as I know, nobody's asked for anything specific. So there's some concern about the area, but I think people have realized that this area is going to change significantly over the next 5 years. And they're preparing for it as best possible. I mentioned the comprehensive plan. It is consistent with our comprehensive plan. We do show this area in the land use plan as mixed use. And as we mentioned before, we do have a housing committee that's looking at updating the land use plan, and we will bring a recommended plan before the planning commission and have a public hearing on that. As soon as we feel confident that we're ready to move forward with that, it should be, we're talking about putting on the November planning commission agenda and potentially December. But at this point, it is November. We'd like to bring that forward. And also the utility map for the Southwest Coast growth area is in your plan, and that shows how the utilities will be served in this location. And this is all information. There's the land use plan, which shows retail and also mixed use in this area. And you can see how the utilities are being served as well. Sorry, Michael. Bouncing back and forth. But, overall, staff's recommendation is to, the planning commission is to approve the rezoning. It has been part of the comprehensive plan for many years, and now that the utilities, road networks are being improved, and we have a strong handle on how those are being improved, and we'll be able to serve this site. And it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval of this rezoning request. And at this time, I will stand for any questions you may have on this rezoning. And the applicant is here tonight if you've got questions for the applicant.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Brad?
Brad, can you remind me, what's the difference between R2 and R3?
Well, R3 is our multifamily category, so we could have apartments. Right now, our density is 18 units per acre. What R2 is just duplexes.
Duplexes only?
Yes, well, duplexes and R1 you can drop down.
Right. So R2 is limited to 2 units per building, basically.
Correct.
Thank you.
What's the plan for that existing house? Are they gonna integrate that into the plan, or is that,
As I understand it, with the applicant, as I understand the house is going to be torn down.
and then what about the sewer? It looks like there is an extension that needs to come up through that north property. Is that gonna be included with that Edgerton Road improvement?
Yeah, and I'll let Mike.
Yeah, so the sewer, if you look at the proposed utilities here, pending infrastructure, it's currently under design. There is a line planned along the west side of Edgerton Road. we don't anticipate that that will be deep enough to serve this entire property. So they may need a pump station that pumps up to there. Or I think your observation's correct, long-term, it really needs to come up through this low point here in the future. So there may be an interim pump facility, waiting on the gravity extension up through. Couple of options there.
I think it's
Any
all I
other
have.
questions for,
Well, I guess one of my questions is, how do we determine that the utilities and future service is adequate if we have no idea what the plan is? It says it could be single family, multifamily, you know, the scale of that is drastic. How do we determine? It says you're in favor, it's positive, but we have no idea what, you know, if there's a lot gonna happen, we're just kind of saying it's all good, or how do we determine
Mike,
that
you wanna
everything's
jump in?
gonna be
Yeah, so
sufficient?
what you need to do when you're analyzing that is take the zoning district and you kind of take the extreme value, you know,
Right.
so anything that is allowable can go in there, you kind of plan for that extreme. In this case, an apartment complex with 18 units per acre, the line that's being designed now is fully capable of handling that flow. So that's usually on a conservative side. But
Right, okay.
now, that gets trickier with an industrial, right? Because one industrial user, I mean, not to go into the weeds about that. but
Well, that's
it's
part
a
of
little trickier there than.
the whole overall plan is, you know, if you look at the whole area.
That's
and
right.
What's going on. It's
Yeah.
like, we need to make sure that.
We, yeah, so when we,
Thought about, because we haven't seen any plans for the Flint development either, so there's no site plan or anything.
That's
for-
right.
Across the street, so.
just the zoning right
How
now.
do we design all this stuff if we have no idea what's going on?
Yep, so there's ways to kind of make sound engineering judgment on the size of the line that needs to be put in now. And so a big part of what we've been doing the last few months is engaging consultants to determine how, you know, within the whole drainage basin, how big does this line need to be? What do we need to accommodate, you know, future growth? So, yeah, all those decisions are being, and we're gonna bring that forward to you when we talk about the land use plan revisions.
Right.
Because they do have some impact on the utility, the future, the long-term utility plan, so those are all good questions to be thinking about.
Because that's my other question is, just talking out loud, I myself am hesitant to pass something where we want to rezone when we're talking about redoing the land use map. You know, there's a plan coming forth, changes, so looking at DeSoto in the future, that's like our prime area for future development. Otherwise, we're blocked everywhere else. So, you know, my thoughts are, before we pass this, shouldn't we see the full plan that's getting evaluated currently to make sure that what we're about to pass is consistent with the long-term plan that's being evaluated currently?
Well, I guess I could answer that is the one thing that we kind of recommended, or our committee's talked pretty extensively about is 103rd and Edgerton on north of Sunflower on 103rd and east of Edgerton is gonna be some sort of multifamily. And then that sort of carries down Lexington, because you've got Clearview City, the other apartment complex, and then also that vacant spot where around the old Countryside School at one point was multifamily or higher density residential. So that's a change that we're gonna recommend now. Once again, it hasn't come before you, so I don't want to give away too much of the, but that's where we're kind of going with all this. And when Mike talks about the southwest growth area, I mean, it's really this quadrant that's on the screen that's being served by those utilities. And we show a lot of it as mixed use, which is a real catch-all category too. It could be.
Right. Which is concerning to me when we look at the current map, because you could put a lot of different stuff in that area. Which is not, you know, you don't wanna have, you know, put a multifamily complex and then put a shopping center and then put a gas, you know. I think we need to think about this before, because that's where all the development's gonna be, is like you said, in that area. So before we just start passing before the full plan's evaluated, that's just my opinion, but maybe we think about pumping brakes until we see the overall plan, just my thoughts.
I think one thing, and it's maybe a little off topic, but you can see we have a lot of retail in this area, and this was done pre-COVID. And now with our new way of doing business, we don't need as much retail rooftops. And transition is, I'm thinking about a lot of those reds will also sort of turn into a multifamily.
Right.
use.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea, I'm just thinking if we're gonna put a plan together and we're working on it, I think we need to make sure what we're passing is consistent with what we're saying we're working on proposing in the future.
Well, I don't think that you can expect the plan's gonna be remarkably different than what we've kind of talked about in the past. This kind of a use that fronts Edgerton Road in that area, I think it's been contemplated as part of the plan all along.
Right.
So I don't think that's a huge leap, but your point's a good one, we don't have it all laid out yet, that's true.
And we're, this will hold true whatever we pass for a long time. And I don't think holding up for 30 days is gonna be the end of the world if we wanted to talk about just pumping until we see the pump the brakes until we see the oil. That- Just my opinion.
Sean, do you have any?
I don't think of at the moment.
There's no other questions for Brad. We'll open up the public hearing at this time. Anyone that would like to come up and ask questions about this item? Come up and state your name and your address.
Michelle Tiedemann, I'm at 9805 Edgerton Road, so I'll be right next to this. My only concern is, I know they're showing these lovely maps, but they're not showing you a picture of what's there right now, which that is all in the floodplains, and there's a creek that runs through there. And they've had a lot of backup at that location that backs up into our property, that we've had to reroute some of the creek so that it doesn't come into our house. So my question is, when you put in multiple houses there, how are you gonna do that in a way that that's not going to flood everybody uphill or downhill from that current location? Because people downhill have reported that they get quite a bit of rainwater that's flooded. The guy did put in a retaining pond, that has helped a little bit, but just concerned when you bring in multiple houses, will that retaining pond go away? And where will that, all that water that is currently going there end up going?
Thank you. Brad, could you,
Well, I
address that?
And maybe this isn't gonna be the best answer for it, but it is in rezoning, and we don't have a site plan in front of us, but part of our requirements is that stormwater will not increase off the site, and there will be on-site stormwater detention on this location. So the amount of water coming off the site during heavy storms should not impact the neighbor to the north. As I understand, the property flows north, and there's a detention pond, not detention pond, but that tract, the Tioga tract has a pond on it, but there will be detention required on site, which will not change the existing condition.
Brad, knowing that that is the situation with flooding now, isn't that something you guys could take an extra look at, knowing that when it comes time to put that in there, that current resident has already expressed concerns, and we can make sure that we try to do everything we can to address that they don't have any further problems?
Yeah, we certainly can do that, and the applicant's here tonight, so that message has been sent. And we'll certainly make sure that the calculations and everything meets current standards and also detention.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but every site plan we see has a drainage study that goes through and either shows that they're retaining it on site or that it drains to the floodway without a problem.
That is correct.
So I assume this would be no different than that, they wouldn't be able to build until they can show it.
Absolutely.
Does that answer your question? As best as we can. I know it's vague, but we can't really say anything until we have a plan in front of us. But we will make sure when the opportunity comes up that we keep that in mind.
Because we're just worried about how much you're gonna level that, as we're watching the leveling of going across the street, how much you're gonna have to level that and how that's gonna impact all of us around that area. You know, one house is one thing, putting in one house isn't gonna make a big deal, but if you're putting a gigantic apartment complex in there, it's definitely gonna affect the land, how the land is laying.
I'll just make one comment to that. So with, the only benefit would be with residential is it has the ability to flow with the grade more so than massive warehouse structures at the building across the street. So it would have the ability to kind of follow the terrain, but not that that's, it's not gonna be all flat to build monster warehouses.
Yeah, there is a little more flexibility as the structures themselves aren't as big and they can match contours as needed without, the work that you see on the west side of Edgerton Road.
When we get the site plan, I guarantee you, we will address that item.
I just know that that's why there's never been a house built there, is because of the fact that it's in the floodplain now. And how do you, who wants to build a house in a floodplain knowing it could flood?
Well, that's a relevant factor for zoning. Is that true that it's in the floodplain? I mean, obviously, part of it may be. Do we have that?
I can pull it up real quick. So this, the light blue shaded area on this map represents an area that is defined as a future flood zone. So with the last watershed studies came through, they defined two types of flood zone, essentially the regulatory flood zone that our code is centered around protecting that, making sure that if anything's built in there, it's protected from flooding. There are insurance requirements associated with that, so that's a higher level of concern. It also showed a planning level future conditions floodplain that is not regulatory but is advisory essentially, and that's what the light blue shaded area is shown here. So when you say it's in the floodplain, yes, it's an area that gets a lot of water. Obviously, there's water that comes down through here. It's not in a FEMA designated regulatory floodplain, and this future conditions planning advisory level floodplain only occurs at the extreme northeast corner of this particular parcel. But it's correct to say that all of this drains into this, and then this flows down onto the neighbor, and so obviously that's a concern. And if there's existing flooding conditions downstream, then the extra care needs to be taken to make sure that whatever happens here doesn't exacerbate that condition. Hopefully whatever happens here can make that condition better.
So that's the subject tract we're talking about?
It's this tract and this one.
Okay.
It's these two here. Yeah. So that advisory level floodplain is actually, for the most part, it's not on this side. But the point's valid that this does drain into there, and it does cross these downstream properties that are here tonight expressing concern with that. So.
Well, that's certainly going to be a big part of the site plan. I mean, if you're going to put 18 units per acre, it's going to be a pretty intense development. It's going to have some way to control that water.
Mm-hmm.
When they're redoing Edgerton Road, are they putting storm sewers in through there?
Yeah. There's enclosed storm sewers that are going in as we speak, essentially. Yeah,
Would those
curb
be big
inlets and
enough?
pipes.
Would those be big enough to be able to divert the water from that apartment complex to there?
It flows the other way, so no. This all flows generally to the east.
Okay.
The storm sewers incident to the roads are generally to drain the road, then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of drainage that comes off of the industrial site that goes onto Edgerton Road that will be taken, but for the most part, everything east drains toward the east.
Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to address this item tonight? Seeing none, we will close our,
Close one and open another one.
Well, no, you can close the public hearing.
I was gonna You said the property owner was here?
Oh, the applicants are here, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Kevin Lee with Polson Law Firm, appearing on behalf of Flood Acquisitions LLC, the contract purchaser, post developer of this property. I think, I'll try to take the questions that I heard in turn here. I think a lot of them are related to the fact that this is just a rezoning before us tonight. The property was recently annexed in October, earlier this month, and consistent with what the city code requires, we're now going through the process of rezoning that within a short period of time thereafter. I think the question that you all have before you this evening is, do the uses that are allowed in the R3 zoning district, is that what the city wants to see here long term? A lot of the other questions related to utilities, floodplain, those types of issues are items that we will absolutely get into as was noted as we go forward with the plan submittals and the platting of this property. So I think that's really the question before you. There was an item asked about the existing house there and what the plans are with that. We do have provisions in our agreement that provide for that, notice given to that owner, and it allows them to stay in their house for a period of time, and they're on board with that and have signed up for same. So we feel really good about this project and this property. We're excited to work with you all and continue working with staff, city leadership on putting together a great plan for this. And this is just the first step of many that will come in this process. So we'd ask for your approval tonight that enables us to go forward and continue having those discussions and putting together a plan.
Any questions for? Well, we thank you for the information.
Thank you, absolutely.
Anybody else like to address the commission on this item? This time we'll close this public hearing. Brad, do you have any other further comments?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Entertain a motion,
Well, maybe some discussion.
please. All right.
I mean, Todd had a valid concern about whether this should be done before we actually have seen the housing plan and those updates to the comprehensive plan.
That's my only concern. I mean, in looking at it, we all know that this is gonna be the area of the future. So I just wanna make sure that we're making the correct decision that we wanna make now, or if we want, or wait until we see the plan, and make sure that it is consistent with what everybody is proposing and it flows well. That's just my thoughts. So, I mean, I definitely agree that housing is gonna be needed. I just wanna make sure that we're putting it where we think we want to put it. And it's consistent. It sounds like we're close on the new plan, so.
I think you may expect more from that committee than it's going to provide.
Yeah, no, I know, I just wanna make sure that it's,
I think we're pretty close to being in line with.
yeah, but, I mean, we don't know what it is yet, so let's just make sure we're all in agreement, I guess, if we're talking about it. That's my thoughts.
Well, Mark, you come in late. Do you have any?
I apologize for being late. I think Todd's got a real good point. I would say it is a lot easier to approve a plan when you do the rezoning. I don't have any concerns with R3 in this area. I don't think it's going to have any impact on any of the other properties around it, obviously, at this point. So I think if staff is recommending approval, I would go along with it. But I agree with Todd. It would be a lot better to have a plan with the rezone.
I guess the way I look at it is what other zone would be appropriate there? And, you know, probably it would seem unlikely to have a proliferation of development of an R1 in that area.
Right.
You'd be then looking at either industrial or retail.
Right.
And this is not right at the interchange, probably not the most likely place that you're gonna see a lot of retail development.
Right.
So, to me, it seems like it's gonna be relatively consistent, I think, with the overall plan to go R3 in this particular location.
Right. Yeah, I don't know either. I just want to make sure that it's maybe, you know, maybe the plan's showing commercial along the outsides and all residential on the inside. I don't know. You're going to drive around some places and it's restaurants and stores on the outside and drive down a side street in your neighborhood. So I just want to make sure that that's not what we're talking about. So.
So I think I'm kind of in agreement.
Any commercial and stuff going around on the outside of it. 'Cause in the R3, it's just basically gonna be for apartment complexes.
That would be the only permitted zone at
Yeah.
this time.
It just seems kind of logical to me right here for this location. You know, I don't see anything smaller going in, and I think the fact was already brought up that the businesses, we've already kind of over contemplated what we might need as businesses, so it kind of makes sense to me.
I guess my only thing is, we don't need to think about necessarily the present or 2 years or 3 years. Well, what's this gonna look like in 5 years or 10 years? Then is it gonna be commercial down and hit a residential, you know? I totally agree, in the present moment, yes, we can put multifamily, it makes sense. What's it look like 5 years or 10 years from whatever the number is? That's all I'm just saying. I want to make sure that it's all consistent and it works, because once we set that, every time somebody comes in, they're going to say, your land use map says that I can put this there. Because we ran into that on a few things in the past. It says the land use map says you can do it. And it's, you can't argue with that. You don't stand much of a chance. So that's just all I want to make sure. Down the road, not present at the moment.
Justin, you have any comments on it?
Yeah, I mean, I've reviewed the staff comments. I'm kind of in agreement with the staff, and I think this is a good spot for that type of zoning and for an approval. I do feel, I understand what Todd's concern is on waiting to see, because I'm on the committee, and I think this is a good spot for it.
Do the commissioners have any more questions for Brad or Mike? This time I'd entertain a motion on this.
I would move we recommend approval to the city council of the rezoning.
We have a motion,
I second.
we have a second. Roll call?
Templin,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Manson,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. We have another public hearing. This would be for the Asher residence at 36,520 West 103rd. Brad?
All right, thank you, Chairman. This is a very similar item, however, it is quite a bit larger tract. It's 78 acres, plus or minus. It is also was rezoned or annexed by City Council on the 6th. And an application has been submitted. It's the city developer is the contract purchaser for this tract. It is 78 acres with a application for R3 multi-family. I will say some of the preliminary conversations we had was perhaps might not be all R3, they might do some duplexes and even some smaller R1 type units. So once again, we've not seen a site plan yet. There's been sort of our preliminary discussions that we had in our sketch plat meeting. As I mentioned, the site is RUR. It's been in the county for quite some time. And I think, just kind of following up on some of your concerns, is this staff report is nearly identical in many ways, except for the differences it faces on to 103rd Street versus Edgerton Road. But we do take all these things into consideration. The utilities can the economic support these types of uses. As you've been going through this whole redevelopment discussion of Sunflower, housing has just consistently come up, not within just the SO itself. People are calling about housing, people are just concerned at the county level. Mike and I met and chatted and met with the county planning staff not too long ago. Part of it was about our discussion, but housing is a big deal, obviously. And these are the things we're trying to move forward, and I know that, it hasn't quite, or it doesn't quite align with current land use plan. We're working on all these things, and so they're not being done in a vacuum. I guess that's what I'm trying to make the point is when we kind of go through this process, and it does seem like these two staff reports are pretty similar. But that's kind of the situation we're at right now. Utilities are going in, road networks are being improved. These properties that have been in their comprehensive plan land use mapping for over 20 years are now realizing this potential. And that's kind of where we're at. And remember one time we had that discussion about the immediate decision versus the long-term plan. We have to make immediate decisions. And sometimes it's not always comfortable because we have our own crystal ball what the future might be. And as near as we can tell at this point, this 103rd corridor will probably be a significant corridor for housing, R3, R2, and potentially some R1. So I guess I won't want to belabor you too much with the staff report. Many of the things are very similar. The access certainly will be on 103rd Street, which is now under design with KDOT. I think it's going to be a design-build project, and it's going to be a 4-lane road with center medians, limited access. The areas that would be mostly impacted by this site would be Clearview City, since it's currently adjacent to it, but that is a multifamily development as well. We've had discussions with the owner of Clearview City, who has made intentions, talked about upgrading and renovating those apartments, but we haven't seen anything yet, but pretty certain that they're to remain as a multifamily, mostly duplex tract, even though it is zoned commercial. Also the tract to the east of Clearview City was at one point part of the housing complex that served the Sunflower development. So this sort of land use plan has been, or land use has been part of Johnson County, DeSoto's area for quite some time, without the transition from an ammunition plant to light industrial uses is now taking place. It's always had this multifamily component, especially in this area, and also Prospector's Point. That's the apartment complex. I never remember the name. That's also just up the road a little bit. So you can see that this transition is taking place right before our eyes as we go through these applications, as we city staff meets with developers, as we meet with the engineering companies about utility lines, as we met with KDOT, road networks, and with county planning staff, road networks and future land use planning. Now we're going to integrate some of the things that we're trying to do and maintain rural character around Sunflower. It's all things that come into play. Anyway, back to the rezoning itself. It's very similar to all the items that I went through with the previous discussion. And I think many of your comments would be fairly similar. I'll make sure that the road network will be able to handle traffic, or the utilities be able to handle all the things that are necessary. One difference here is this tract is within the DeSoto Water District's territory, so we will be serving this location. We are talking about and are going through a process of evaluating our own water plan and our capacities. We will be able to meet and serve this location. So I guess with that, I'll stand for any more questions you might have, but it's a very similar staff report, and so if there's anything you might know in addition to what's in the report.
Any questions for Brad?
Well, I just noticed something on our agenda. I believe 5A and 5B addresses are backwards.
Yeah, you kind of threw me for a loop there.
Okay, you're right. I did switch those.
So technically, we just approved this one on the first one.
Well, I've approved it on the report for the first one, whether it's on the agenda or not.
As long as Brandon got the address correct, we're good.
Form, would you like to entertain a motion to amend the agenda to switch 5A and B?
I think we should.
I would make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Manson,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
motion carries.
Good call.
Good catch.
Yeah, that's interesting, John, when I first put the preliminary agenda together, I had the Valley Spring and 83rd Circle one on top, and I figured I'd just tie those with the, go right into the preliminary and final plats, I just moved it down and, out of order, so, anyway. Anyways, kind of, you can find those small little items,
It's
John.
just you, it's okay. Brett, I have a question. Maybe I didn't understand you correctly, but we're rezoning to R3. Did I hear you say that there could be some regular housing and duplexes in here as well?
Yeah, those were some preliminary discussions that we got with the applicant at the sketch plat. Nothing was concrete. It's just, it's a large tract, and so there could be some different types of housing rather than just three-story apartment buildings throughout the site.
Was there any discussion with the applicant about other types of uses for this tract? And I know, I think we're hamstringing that we only do one zone per tract, and this is all one tract. But along 103rd Street, and assuming that plant entrance stays kind of a corridor into the plant, you'd think there might be some commercial opportunities there. You'd hate to have that necessarily not be used for that, but we can't entertain a zoning of multiple zones on the same tract anyhow, right?
Yeah, I think you could.
Really?
You could rezone a portion of this tract just based on a legal description that's submitted.
Like
We're not
100 feet of-
bound to tract lines for
Okay.
zoning.
Yeah, we may want a QT in there.
Well, considering the traffic is gonna be on that road, that would seem like a likely place for a commercial zone, but not for the entire tract.
Right.
Yeah, we've not really discussed that particularly with the developer, but I'd like to address that. Certainly you can, but we have looked, as you know, the land use plan, there's a lot of retail on it, so I felt like we'll probably be reducing retail with our land use there.
Again, for the record, Kevin Lee with Polson Law Firm, appearing on behalf of Flint Acquisitions LLC. So our thought on commercial at this location, we did talk about it briefly during our sketch plat and pre-app meeting, is that commercial is not appropriate at this specific location, given that there's 90 acres next door. We think on that property and or the hard corner is where you're more likely to see retailers want to locate. Also, it's really the initial step to get additional rooftops in this area, density. That's what's ultimately going to be attractive and bring retailers and other commercial users to this place. On the question of R3 only, so Brad's correct, but getting into the weeds of that, R3 allows both two-family and multifamily, and so our intent is to look at a combination of those two factors there, whether it be duplexes, Class A townhomes, or multifamily apartments. It'd be a combination of those uses, all of which are allowed in R3. And then on the comp plan, I just wanted to clarify that I hear the concerns of Commissioner Manson and others have echoed of potentially doing something now when you've got this other plan in process. I think everyone's correct that you're likely to see that either be more consistent or very similar with what the current plan is. I don't know that for certain. That's up to you all, obviously. I would submit that as it stands today, the current plan is consistent with this rezoning. I think it designates both of these properties as part of a larger mixed-use development that includes a number of different residential uses in there as well, such as those that we're contemplating that would be allowed in R3. So I think that we are consistent with that plan, and I'm assuming for any other questions you have on those items.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for him? Okay, thank you.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff, I think. we're looking at R3 here, and is that 18 units per acre?
Correct, yes.
So we're looking at about 1,400 units here.
Well, potentially, that would be.
I mean, that's what we're approving it for tonight.
Yes, you were actually putting all the potential uses within that part three category. Yes, that is a,
So has there been any, I mean, I understand 103rd Street's gonna have plenty of capacity, but is there been any study of the interior area for road system, or where all these people probably aren't gonna come south?
yeah, we've not seen any specific layouts for this. We did have a sketch plan meeting, we talked about these items, but no site plan has been submitted to us at this time for us to really comment about. But certainly everybody wants to have a smooth a transition as possible for residents, future residents, in DeSoto, out on 103rd, Pennington, and East Door, west of Keith and Highway. I can't answer specific questions, you know, plan to comment.
Yeah. I see this as having a bigger impact than the prior approval, you know, a lot bigger space and not so much frontage on the arterial roadway. Is there any advantage for DeSoto to approve this at this point?
Only that we know that there's a significant amount of housing pressure that's coming our way. The development community, and, you know, we get calls daily on what tracks are available, what can we do. So there's a lot of pressure, not just to meet the need for construction in Panasonic plant and Flint's development, but just, it's got the attention of everybody at this point. So if we slow this down, it's not gonna stop that pressure from moving, building on us. So I do think it'd be beneficial for DeSoto to move this forward. We're not gonna solve the housing issue with just 2 R3 rezonings. It's gonna take a concerted effort of looking at this whole growth area, but also other areas within town. As you know, there's another item on the agenda for rezoning a tract, multi-family duplexes. So these are all things that are coming through that I think are important, that, you know, there's a strong pressure for housing to happen, and we're trying to respond to it as best possible.
Thank you.
Is there a time constraint after annexation to rezone to a city zone, or is there no limit on
Well, we do have in our code, it says 90 days, that it should be rezoned. Now, that's a, we can, after 90 days, the city can take the initiative and rezone. It
that?
doesn't have to.
That's the pattern we're on, which you've done the annexation, so we're doing our city rezoning.
Well, this is developer or applicant driven rezoning, but after 90 days, the city can initiate a rezoning if the owner chooses not to do it. But we don't have to, we're not forced to do anything. We just have that option.
Any other questions for Brad or Mike? This time we'll open up the public hearing on this. Do we have anyone who'd like to come forward and address this? Concerns? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Anybody have any other questions or concerns about this item?
Sunflower Road, a city of DeSoto maintained road, or is that a county road?
It's, we maintain that. Yeah, south of 95th, it's us. Yeah.
There are no more questions for Brad or Mike, that entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that the city council approve the rezoning to R3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Huggins,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Henslin,
Yes?
Garrett,
Yes.
Manson,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. We've got a public hearing. This is on rezoning of Valley Springs and 83rd Circle. And
Let the record reflect.
I got him.
hey, Brad,
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This apparently is our housing rezoning planning commission meeting tonight. What you have before you with this application is a 3.5 acre tract for rezoning from commercial C2 to R2. It's a duplex unit off of Valley Spring Drive. And I'm part of the applicant this year tonight. I'm doing a lot of development work in City of DeSoto. And this is just a continuation of a lot of the work that has been done in this area in the past. The properties, all these properties within, where we're showing the duplexes have been rezoned from commercial to R2 in the last 3 years, 4 years perhaps. We did go through the standard process, send out notification letters, advertise in the paper, sign out indicating that this property is going to be rezoned. We have met with the applicant to talk about this in our sketch plat meeting. This day I've not heard any comments from any residents about the rezoning. I did get a gentleman stopped by before the meeting, was asking about getting a strike put down on Valley Spring Drive and the speed limit reduced, but other than that, it was not specific to the rezoning itself.
Maybe now's a good time to take an opportunity to introduce Chet to the planning commission. That hasn't been done, has it? We have been remiss. Chet Belcher is our new city engineer and public works director. He started with us a week ago today. Comes from us, to us by way of Olathe, and before that, career in the consulting community and also with the county. So we're really lucky to have Chet on board. So you'll be seeing him. He'll become a familiar face to you. So sorry we didn't make that introduction at the start of the meeting.
All right, thank you, Mike. Picking up with the staff report, the current property is zoned C2, business general. The whole area itself is, it's zoned PD, but it is typically, you can see a lot of the R1 areas, and then the hash or striped area is planned development, but it's all single-family homes in that area. The duplexes have been quite successful in this location, and also you can see the Valley Springs Senior Apartments is multi-family, which will back up to it. There is a fairly significant rise from the back of the property line that will sort of buffer these two districts from each other. You can see the contour maps does slope quite a bit, and actually the grading permit's been issued, and that location has been leveled out and is ready for development for housing. These units will not have basements, so they're all slab on grade. And they're very similar to the facilities themselves, or the duplexes across the street, except those are all, or most of them, maybe not all of them, are walkouts on the 83rd Court and 83rd Lakes. So these will not have basements. Going through the review compatibility factors, so I mentioned the overall area is a lot of single family. The areas to the west is R2, medium density, and then also to the north is R2. You can see living is adjacent to the east, and then to the south is the Harbor Ridge. R1 subdivision, I say R1, it's actually a planned development. But this area is really working well together as far as compatibility, existing and proposed uses. Once again, I've not heard any complaints from any of the neighbors. Nobody's opposed to the rezoning. So now you really do have a or mixed-use development in this area with multifamily R2 and R1 in this area. Property has been vacant for quite a few years, even though utilities have been located there, but it was C2 and it just wasn't the economics to make a commercial district viable and to move forward with, once again, the demand for housing in DeSoto is being requested to be rezoned to R2. Extent to which there's a need in the community. We've been talking about this for quite some time. Housing is a big deal in all zoning categories, all use categories. I think that this is an appropriate use for this area. Extent to which the uses would adversely affect the basic capacity or safety. As mentioned, there was a request tonight about maybe potentially looking at the speed limit on Valley Spring Drive, and we will discuss that. It's not part of the zoning, but I just want to let you know that there is some concern about some of the traffic in the area, but the majority of these homes will come off and have driveways on Valley Spring Drive, and we feel like it won't particularly impact Valley Spring negatively for the residents of this area. Environmental impacts, do you see any particular potential for environmental harm, with any kind of water pollution, air pollution, noise pollution that we evaluate when we go through these zones. Currently, the property is underutilized. It's been vacant for quite some time. It was a C2 commercial district, which just never got any traction as far as any kind of office development or any kind of retail in this area. Just didn't have the traffic on 83rd Street. And sort of the location itself is in that subdivision, so you have to leave if they're to drive into that location for a retail site. And it is much more better served as housing in that location. Don't see any detriments to nearby property as far as the change to R2. There's R2 surrounding the location, at least on the east and on the west and the north. There'd be a little gain by the adjacent neighborhoods in denying the request. And the complaint does show this area remaining as C2. We just haven't updated this portion, but its development pattern in this area has clearly been towards housing. R2 development seems to fit within this area quite well. As I mentioned earlier, it is a true mixed use area with R1, R2, and R3 uses in this area. Overall, staff is recommending approval of this zoning request. And at this point on, we'll stand for any questions you might have. R is here tonight, so if you have any questions for the applicant, please available as well.
Any questions for Brad or Mike?
Brad and Mike, one of my concerns I know we've talked about before is I'm concerned about handicap accessibility for some of these units. I don't know whether that is something that the city can specify that we start addressing or something to that effect. I know it's more expensive for the builder, but you know, maybe some of these young families coming in will have their grandparents come live with them and they'll look for some place that they need that has already got the accessibility, because that's a real issue. I've gone through it with two of my parents and some friends that had emergencies that required that, and that's not easily found and it's expensive to address after the fact. So I would certainly like to see us put on the edge of maybe addressing some of those requirements.
All right, thanks, Linda. I will just say this, I've had some discussion with Don, just not necessarily related to this, but to zero entry homes, things like that, which are in essence handicapped accessible. And Don has built a few of those in the R1 district. But Don, you want to address that specifically on whether or not you're planning on doing it, but it does make a difference not having that one step going into the front door.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an interesting facet to having this type of opportunity.
And I'm Don Barr, 17688 Golden Road. And yeah, if you look to the north there's 4 duplexes that I did,
Mm-hmm.
and those are all on grade as well. And, yeah, my whole goal is always to make it, you'd rather accessible to everybody. So on those, I put all like 2 8 doors in.
Good.
And then anything that I do on grade, I always put a storm shelter.
Wonderful.
So it's not required at this time, but I do it anyways. I do a concrete storm shelter.
Great.
But when you get back to the others that you're talking about, so those lay nicely for ranches, and so that's why it works really well. I even put a handicap threshold between the kitchens and the garage.
Mm-hmm.
So they were really actually designed for multiple floors and handicap.
And then the bathrooms, are they designed for HDA?
Yeah, I actually did them big enough that I didn't do the vanities that you can get under, but yes, the doorways.
And the showers are walk-in showers or?
Yes.
Good.
But on the rest of the units, the 9 duplexes to the south, probably the bulk of those are going to be 2 stories. So they, the bedrooms are going to be upstairs. So it kind of eliminates, it just,
Sure.
you don't need it.
Right.
And then just kind of clarify too, on the site plan, it does show everything is on grade, but I definitely want the option to, we did a lot of borings, and there's a lot of rock. So, where I can put basements in, I'm still gonna try to do that, assuming, you saw if you get the grading plans approved in each house. To make sure, because I'd like to do some reverse ranges. So once again, we end up, with the steps on those. So if there's ever a spot I can put a bigger door, I always do.
Wonderful.
But when you have a foundation, it's very difficult to get the garage all up.
Sure.
To be even, zero, walking. So
Well, I
yes.
appreciate your attention to that detail, because I know
Oh,
that makes a
thanks.
lot, big difference to a lot of folks. And putting in the storm shelter for people too, that's just
Yeah,
a
I
real
could
plus.
sleep with that.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's not that hard to do, so.
thank you for doing that.
But so to answer your question, 6 of them will be, the 9 to the south will not be.
Okay.
You probably don't really limit the size.
Well, that's a good portion, thank you.
Yeah.
Don, I have a question for you. On that east side, that slope's pretty steep.
Uh-huh.
You see any problems with water coming down the hill?
So it was all engineered, and then, yeah, what comes down goes through a swell to a storm drain to the north. And that's why I put that in a tract, is I got to thinking, like all the others, everything is individually owned. I didn't see how, with it being steep, how he was going to maintain that in a good way. If there's fences, et cetera. So I just put all of the slope part into tract A so that it can be maintained, by the every maintenance provided by the mowers. And that way the backyards themselves are, by making that a little steeper and pushing it back, you can maintain it in a weird way because people aren't on it then. And then that made the backyards relatively flat. So,
Okay.
but yeah, they looked at how much water was gonna come off. And it is, which I don't like to do, but I do have to put in a storm drain. It's on the plan on the north side there.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Tom?
He already answered mine about the storm sewer, or storm shelter, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Don.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Fred before we go into the public hearing?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the rezoning that created this C2. And I don't really remember why it was C2. Was it, at the time, did we also have C2 designations for what has developed as the R2 around it? Was that all at one time originally C2?
Yeah, the history is, does anybody remember Doc Blue?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this was his property, I believe, a good part of this, and he had it zoned to C2 back in the 80s, I believe,
Okay.
and it had just historically been C2.
So it probably just left it that way when we did all the other.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously to me, an R2 is a downgrade from the C2, and we already have plenty of traffic on 83rd and Valley Spring as it is, and I can't imagine putting significant commercial development there would make anybody happy. So it seems appropriate to me that its use should be changed, especially if it's just because, well, the rest of it didn't develop commercially, so it kind of makes more sense to make it consistent with the rest of the neighborhood.
We need more housing too.
Well, that's obviously an issue.
Any other questions?
Yeah, on that point though, we do need more housing. We also have to keep in mind that rooftops alone don't pay the bills, and we've got to make sure we have areas that will be able to service those rooftops, which has been a problem with us in the past.
Yeah.
So, I'm always loath to give up a C2 or a C1 anywhere in the city. That said, this is developed in a way that I don't think it makes much sense to do.
Okay, if there's none, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody like to come forward and have any questions about this item? Come forward and state your name and address.
Hello, my name's Jared Booth, 31570 West 84th Terrace, and we back up pretty much right onto the south side of the track, where we have no problems with the rezoning to residential. Our main concern, however trivial it may seem, is the line of trees behind our house on the easement, and you did pull up a picture with the actual housing development, and I was curious to see how far south the development and the houses were actually going to extend.
There's a note on C101 that says those trees are remaining.
They will remain.
They will remain.
That's what it says on C101, his site plan.
Lovely.
I talked to you before about this, Dawn.
It was shown part of the plat. Can we see the?
Yeah, point of order, just a little, it might be a nitpick, and we'll show it, but I want to make sure we're keeping clear the distinction between the rezoning application and action, which is a public hearing, which is the current item, and the site plan approval, which is the next item, which is a separate item. So important to just keep that in mind. But so yeah, we'll pull up then the next item, the layout there on the house. So this is a note, is this note 14?
Note 16 says it.
Note 16, okay.
Do you have an idea of how far from the easement that is? I'm just kind of curious. It looks like, our concerns are not founded, so.
Well, your concerns are always founded, but if we can help resolve them, that would be good.
Certainly.
Answer to, yeah, so a lot of, what we were completely 100% on is it's an old hedgerow down the property line. There are hedge trees, Osage orange, and that every one of them, they're big, so all of those need to stay. Within that diagram, you'll see there's some stuff that's overgrown, and obviously some of that could come out. But all the large trees are going to stay on the property line. Obviously, those could get trimmed up or something like that. But what I did is I designed that lot to be wider, so I didn't have to put the house close to the trees. So it's actually, that lot was designed around the trees.
Sure.
So if you notice, it's the widest lot in the house. Sits, because I love trees. Sure. And then I also made sure that none of the utilities go down that side, so they wouldn't have to tear them out as well.
Sure.
But just once again, for clarification, some of that does come out in the back, but we're not talking about the large trees down the property.
Right. And, actually, we like that bush that's sort of outgrown is right behind that.
Yeah.
It really, but, I
It'd
mean,
be a
the
selling
hedgerow
factor,
trees
too.
are the main.
For the people that want to buy this unit, it's a selling factor to have those trees there for the price.
Absolutely, I think so, yeah.
And do I have to be up there too? Are these the duplexes, will they be facing to the west?
Correct.
So this would be the side of their place?
Yeah, notice how it's a lot bigger than the others.
Yes, it's
So
a different
I
layout,
tried to
so,
push it, so the only reason I did that at all is simply because of the trees.
but the front face would be facing the west,
Correct. Yes. So the side would be.
the side would be facing us.
Thank you very much.
Really, thank you.
Thank you.
Does everybody else would like to, make a comment? We want to thank everyone for their input tonight. Any questions? This time we'll close the public hearing. Have any other questions for Brad or Mike, or roll call?
Need a motion.
Oh,
Move we recommend, well, I guess we're approving this, right? We don't have to.
No, this is the rezoning item. This is the public hearing for the.
I move that we recommend approval of the rezoning to the city council.
we have a motion and a second.
Wait, we don't have a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Now we can vote, Bob.
Al. Roll call?
Manson,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay.
Who's the other? Who's that five?
Oh, he's out for the next two.
Next one is item,
Not yet, sorry. Also on.
Well, the solar,
Yeah, I was wondering,
Oh,
Chair, if
change
you might want
yeah.
to move that whole business item to the end of.
Yeah.
all right, we can
We
do
can
that.
just keep going.
I'd like to move that we amend the agenda to move item 6A to be taken up after 7.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Chairman, we probably need to get Justin back to vote on this motion.
Okay.
I thought he was back there, I guess he,
Let me go get him.
huh?
The whole reason we're doing it is because we don't, so we didn't have to
Who's
go
on
get it.
first?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're changing this around for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to come back.
Listen, I just made a motion to move item 6A to be heard after 7.
Perfect. Second. Yes, sorry.
I didn't catch a second on that motion, I apologize. I didn't catch,
I seconded it.
thank you. Okay.
Roll call?
Manson,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Milborn,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, item 7. Huh?
He's leaving again.
Let the record reflect.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe we've covered most of the topics for the preliminary plat as far as sort of more of the key issues. I did want to point out that we do have a notification requirement. It's not a public hearing requirement, but we do notify the property owners of preliminary plat. So that was also completed as well. We did do our technical review and actually Chip provided comments for review of the preliminary plat, which included the drainage, which Don had mentioned. We'd also noted that the trees to the south should remain because we do have once again, a landscape buffering requirement from similar zoning uses, and felt instead of tearing the trees out and having the developer replant trees, it's probably just better to leave the ones that are there. So that's why we asked the developer to add that. I guess one of the things that is a concern, but all parking is available on the driveways in front of the units, because all those, the 9 units do come out onto Valley Spring Drive, so it's pretty important that we no on-street, everything off-street parking, which meets our requirements. So that was something that was a key concern, to make sure that there was adequate parking for all the units in the driveways themselves, and also to stay out of the right of way, not just be right up to the edge of the curb line itself, and that requirement has been met. Once again, Jeff reviewed the preliminary plat, and it does meet our requirements for preliminary plats in development. Now, stand for any questions you have. All the utilities are in place. Okay, what's good about this project is it's an infill project, so all the utilities, road networks, all those things are in place. It won't provide or any additional new lines or things that the street department needs to take care of. Those have already been absorbed into our man-hour as far as maintaining these items. And of course, then the new development, the new materials, so we don't anticipate any problems in the near future with maintaining inside of this area.
I'd like to make a comment. I think it's good use, and I think this is a good spot. I guess I was wondering if there's been any looking at 83rd Street for improvements. Does the city have any plan for that?
No immediately identifiable plan. There's a recognition that corridor will become much busier in the immediate future than it is now, and there's a recognition that we need to do a corridor study kind of all the way out to the Lenexa, but nothing specific. I would say that this property did, when it was initially platted, signed an agreement not to protest a benefit district for a future traffic control at 83rd and Kill Creek. When the Arbor Ridge subdivision first went in the mid-2000s, that was a concern at that time. So that still remains with this property. But beyond that, there's nothing I can immediately point to say, yeah, we're proceeding with that.
Anybody else have any questions?
Do we have, what is our density allowed in this district, in R2?
Well, we don't have an acreage density, it's just two.
Don't have any rule
per lot.
Yeah, 2 units per lot, and the minimum lot size and setbacks kind of dictate this.
So minimum
density.
setbacks, I mean, this I assume complies with all that. It just, obviously, the one picture of it looks like it's pretty dense, and I'm like, do we have any guidelines on that? I mean, how much space is there between those units?
Yeah, well, we checked that, it does meet our setback requirements, and, you know, if you brag, Roger, it does look that, but.
Well, it may just be the way that it looks.
Same as the ones across the street, yeah. They're gonna be, at least the 9 units are gonna be pretty good size, and I think the ones to the north are a little bit smaller. I believe the 1 through 9 are 2-car garage duplexes.
Correct.
So that's why you can see like unit 9's got, looks like 6 cars on one side. So.
Yeah. So each of those has a 2-car garage, those
Correct.
9 units,
Yes.
which kind of explains all the gravel, all the concrete driveway in front of them, right?
Yep. It's gonna look a lot like this, except not on a curve. It's a very similar density of it.
Is it? As long as it complies, I'm good with it.
Anybody else have any questions? Need a motion on this?
Now, this we're actually approving, right?
Yeah, planning commission
Right.
approves this.
I make a motion that we approve the plat as presented.
We have a motion,
Second.
have a second, any further discussion? Roll call?
Wayne?
Yes.
Templin?
Yeah.
Garrett,
Yes.
Manson,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, item B, consider final plat for Arbor Ridge Townhomes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the final plat is typically just lot lines, easements, doesn't get into building footprints, setbacks, things like that. It does go to city council, acceptance of easements and right of ways. For our typical review, provide comments to Commissioner Miller, who was the engineer on this item. He did make those corrections, and which it was really a reflection of the preliminary plat, but this document gets filed with the county as far as ownership and legal description. It does meet our requirements for duplexes. I guess tract A, Don, is something that Homes Association will maintain.
Yeah, that's the
It's basically in
slope
the
park,
park.
correct.
Yeah. And these are all, make this divided. So these are requirements for a final plat. If you have any questions, we'll certainly do that. But you can clearly see on that lot one, it's bigger than all the others to account for allowing for some of the existing vegetation to remain along that southern property line.
So who benefits by the entry easement at the southern edge of this? Is that for the benefit of some other neighboring tract?
Well, it's actually for that tract A to get back there.
Okay, so that's for the benefit of tract A.
Yes.
And then the drainage easement that's gonna be released, who is that for the benefit of?
The drainage easement it's a city easement. There's currently an area drain in this area, this general location that takes runoff from, actually, did you tear it out yet?
No, but
It doesn't, I don't think it ever really took much, but there was a box out there.
So it's the city easement.
It's a city easement that we would
The
no
city's
longer,
willing to
yeah,
release.
we would no longer
Is
need.
there something down in there?
Yeah, it's not buried.
I was gonna say, I've never seen anything down in there.
Yeah, it was supposed to at one point, but, yep. And Brad, I think this entry easement is a part of that, there's an entry signage, that as you go into Arbor Ridge,
that's
there's
right.
kind of a neighborhood sign there. I think that
So
was
it's
the
actually for the
intent. of that.
benefit of the neighbors to the south.
Yes. Yes,
Is that a common area for the Arbor Ridge?
right. And it remains.
10 feet?
10 feet by about 10 feet.
Oh, so it's just that little box?
Just this box here, yeah.
And then the utility easement goes back?
Utility easement continues back.
Which then I guess begs the question, how do you get to Lot A?
This utility easement.
The utility easement would also have an access component to it?
Yeah, there's two utility easements there.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for Brad or Mike? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the final plat for the Arbor Ridge Townhomes.
We have a motion,
Second?
we have a second, any further discussion? Roll call,
Huggins,
Yes.
Milburn, Schultz,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes?
Garrett,
yes.
Manson,
Yes.
motion carries.
You wanna grab Justin?
Be about timeout.
Okay. Old business, update on the solar ordinance?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't put together a staff report on this item, but I did want to update you on what sort of transpired from our previous meeting. Now, we did get some comments from the Savion solar developer, that's working with Sunflower on some discussion items. But I think more importantly, Mike, Chet, and myself met with county planning staff on a variety of issues, including transportation corridors, which does kind of affect the solar development, because we want to make sure, as Roger had said, you don't want to have a solar doorstop, I believe is your term, that obviously we didn't account for transportation easements through this, and that they would potentially be a stop to some sort of development in the area in 30, 40 years from now. So we want to make sure that what we were doing within the confines of SRL is also met up with the county's arterial system, which are section lines and half-section lines. As we move farther west, those roads will be extended at some point into the Sunflower development area. So we want to make sure we get all those things coordinated, but specifically, the county, when they went through it, we adopted our ordinance very similar off theirs. It actually just took a lot of things that applied to the county and tailored it towards DeSoto. But we also decided we're going to have a special meeting set up just with county staff to confirm that, you know, the information that Savion is giving us is accurate. The county did hire a solar expert from, I believe it was North Carolina, to help them with their ordinance. And we just don't want to be able to sit and pick their brain, the county's brain, on how to make sure that we're not missing anything. So we don't have to use the wherewithal to go out and go through a selection process, hire a consultant, do all the things, which in essence is going to be a duplication of an effort. So we haven't had that meeting set up yet. So really, it's just, we're kind of waiting till we can get that meeting set up, and then we'll bring an ordinance for your review in the near future. I don't know if we'll get it on the November agenda, but it's something that we want to do because we do know that, as Mike has talked about, there is a potential that they could kind of skirt the Southwest Power Pool process, potentially have a proposal in front of us, you know, in early spring. So if you've got any other concerns or comments, certainly you can give those to us. You know, you don't have to confine your comments to staff at meetings. I guess one thing anecdotally I wanted to share with you is I went to Fort Worth, drove to Fort Worth a couple, 3 weeks ago, north of Gainesville. There's a very large solar farm, so got off the highway and took a look at it, and interestingly, it's 300 acres, and we're talking potentially 3,000 acres south of Sunflower. But even so, with 300 acres, it's a fairly significant facility, but it didn't have any setbacks. It was road, fence, gravel road, panels. And I feel pretty good that we've got a 150-foot buffer between the edge of the boundary and the panels themselves. We've also talked about berms and landscaping. So really, as of itself, I mean, the facility was quiet, hear anything, there was no buzzing, humming, things like that.
Do you see any glare?
Didn't have any glare. These are actually, the panels themselves were pretty flat, so any kind of reflection was probably going up. There was nothing that made me feel like, you know, look out, you see, you know, sun angle changes or something like that, this could be a problem. My sort of thought was, wow, you know, they really could use some screening just to keep it off of a visual.
What looks cool in the desert as you drive into LA from Las Vegas.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to share, that's kind of where we're at with this. And we need to set up that meeting and then really kind of the county to make sure that the things that we glean from their ordinance are appropriate and we didn't miss something.
Thank you for taking the
So
time.
if you've got any questions for us, certainly feel free to, as you educate yourselves on solar development, please pass any kind of information or comments you may have along to us. And Mike, if you've got anything like that.
No, that just would duplicate what you've already said. Yeah, I think we still have, you know, the questions that we've addressed here, and we want to coordinate with the county on those questions, because we're pretty sure in that year-long or year-and-a-half-long process that they went through, they had the same discussions with their consultants, so we just didn't need to reinvent that wheel, like, gain from their experience on that.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. I know there's a lot of detail to it and a lot of thought that goes into it. That said, I will continue to carry Tim Fisher's banner and say that whatever you ultimately bring back needs to have some sort of mechanism that it makes it so that it makes sense for the city. Some benefit to
Yeah.
the city for doing this.
I think there is still credence to really asking the question, how big, how much land do we want to give up
Yeah.
for this? Because 3,000, that's a lot.
That's a lot of acreage.
And it's,
3,000 acres that you're not gonna get much in terms of increased tax revenue on, or.
yeah, well, I mean, the short answer to that is you just gotta cut a deal. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
utility
answer,
deal.
you gotta cut a deal, you know, you have to have an annual fee.
But that deal, I think, needs to, that concept.
Needs to be
of,
codified.
You don't just have the right to do this.
Right.
It's gonna have to be something we'd approve that actually makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and codified to some degree.
Yes.
So that future planning commissions and councils have
Recognize
some
those
framework to negotiate by.
And I think being on those committees with the county, one of the things that was presented to us was that 1,000-acre solar field is pretty rare. And most of them are smaller than that, which, you know, raised a lot of questions among the Johnson County Planning Commissioners is, you know, why are we being asked to approve such a large field here when that's not even industry standard? So I think that's a question we should look at too. Are there any feasibility problems that we're not being presented with this?
I think we've talked about that before, about 3,000 maybe being too much ground to give away.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just looking at future master plan for Sunflower, and there was also a discussion, let's just define that these can't happen anywhere other than a particular geographical region, so we don't have the floodplain filling up with them. When you start looking at 9,000 acres and then you take 2,000 acres off for the parks and then you take a couple more thousand acres because of one reason or another, and then you look at the economic opportunities that are in front of us for the next 10 years, you kind of come to this intersection of lines where you may be at the point of giving up some actual economic opportunity that otherwise might present itself if you permit a 3,000 acre solar field. I think that's the discussion. That's probably that's the question for us, is what is the comfort level with that?
Well, it's a policy question. I mean, it's something the council kind of needs.
And yeah, and we need to help them vet through that.
I will add that couple things that the Savion group pushed back on was they actually wanted more than 3,000 acres, and of course they wanted longer term. So that's something we want to talk specifically with the county, because they had a smaller size and then also a shorter term. But they did have a vision for a 5-year administrative approval.
Yeah. And the balancing act is that of the global capacities that we might run into with the tremendous opportunities, workforce, how much water can you pump out of the river, power is one of them. So it's not bad to have power, a power provider in the neighborhood either. That's
How efficient are those in the wintertime? Because we're not exactly bright and sunny most of the winter here.
Well, it's the same conversation as with wind. You know, you sell it to the grid, and maybe there's storage available, and you know, it's a peaking facility, and you know, the technology is catching up with that question, I think, as we move on. And battery storage is one answer to that.
Do we fire up the city power plant, or?
Oh, but we had one. We don't have one.
Never have?
But
No,
actually, these proposals don't include providing anything for DeSoto as far as power goes, do they?
Well, we don't know that yet.
I mean, the ones what we were looking at,
Yeah.
just went into the grid.
Into the grid, yeah, and so far that has been one solution. that this is just gonna go to the grid on the Southwest Power Pool. But the other one is, maybe there's a deal cut with Evergy, and the solar provider is an Evergy energy supplier. And it does get put in, kind of at least to the local grid, and then the third one is a back of the meter deal, where the solar field is, you know, the power from that's piped straight to a factory that's right there on site. So there's, I mean, we don't know, but kind of the state of the industry is changing in those ways. And there's some regulatory hurdles that exist now that might not exist 5 years from now, doing some of that. We didn't want to be the tip of the spear, so we let the county kind of do it, but spear's kind of still being made on the thing to a degree.
Any other questions for Mike or Brad?
Thanks, Deputy.
Need a motion to adjourn?
So I got a question. Do we have requirements on like working 24/7 and sound ordinances and light output and all that stuff? Is that stuff, do we have all that stuff in place?
Yes, we do.
Is
Yep.
all that stuff in?
It is, they are in full compliance with all the city code
I'm just
regarding
curious.
to working hours,
I have a nice glow
vibrations,
in my backyard and
noise.
noise that's never indexed, so I just was curious if they're in compliance with the city.
Yeah, they are. They have a seismograph across the street and a sound recording listening device and.
And then who implements dust control on mass excavation? Who regulates that?
Yeah, well, it'd be an air quality issue, conceivably. It is
'Cause
dusty.
I know that we have
There-
concerns about people that live around these areas, and if you've been out there lately when the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour,
Yeah, it's a cloud.
all you get is haze
Yeah.
across all that land out
Yeah,
there, so.
definitely it is. It is a cloud, yeah.
So who, is that, somebody address that stuff, or that it's?
Yeah, we can, you know, in connection with the permit, the problem is we don't have a city code that says thou shalt not create dust, right? Or that there's some sort of a standard or parameter to, now, there's a good neighbor policy,
Right.
and they're buying 125,000 gallons of water a day from us to suppress that.
Right.
And the weather hasn't really cooperated except for 2 days ago. They're working, they know that there's an issue, we see it too, so we're doing what is possible there. Understand, if we get another 50-mile-an-hour wind out of the south after no rain for 2 months, it's gonna be it'll be that way. And it might be the same if it was just a 300-acre soybean field that had just been plowed too. So.
Well, it does beg the question, though, maybe we ought to consider our grading policy that doesn't permit such a large-scale grading without plans to actually install something on it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe we don't want to look at that. and
That's
say,
a live and learn
Yeah,
Right.
point, yeah.
because it is a large-scale grade.
You still never see site plans or anything else.
Right, I mean, I don't know how far away we are from actually doing anything to fix that.
Yeah, so, on the planning side, the intent is that, we will, most likely, we haven't gotten the application yet, but more than likely in November, you'll see a preliminary plat for the 1,300 acres that was zoned last month. That will include a final plat for the Panasonic site, the 300 acres of the Panasonic site, plus the road right-of-way and things around. We're confident you're gonna see that in November. And you might also see a site plan for the facility, the 3 million square foot footprint and associated buildings and parking lots and all the world of things that go. You may see that in November, but you may not. That might be delayed by a month. But they've indicated that a site plan application is imminent on that. So will be soon. No. So for the Flint development, they haven't landed a tenant yet. So as soon as they do, then that process.
So a grading permit allows full mass site grading and building all that without any approval?
Yep.
We probably ought to look at that.
I move a lot of dirt up there.
I just think it's odd that they were the first one that got the stuff going. We're already talking about site plans and stuff from Panasonic, and we haven't gotten anything back from them. But yet they were in such a hurry to get all of that stuff.
It's a $4 billion project. It's very complicated, lots of moving parts and.
Which is fine to the extent it doesn't create a hazard for everybody around it, to the extent you've got blowing dust for the next 2 years until they
Yeah.
finally get a tenant. That's an issue.
Small candles does more.
We probably just need to think about how we're issuing those.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. A little stiffer dust control regulation, and, you know, I'm confident that Panasonic's contractor and the contractor working over on Flint have the capacity to address an issue like this that we have, and we can let them know that it is, and so just because we don't have a hammer to bring down doesn't mean we can't make some progress on the issue, so we'll work to do that.
So these contractors that are out there, obviously, they had some plans. They're doing staking off of something. Did we get to look at the plans, those plans for the land disturbance permit, or?
Yeah, so they had grading plans. Yeah, so they did a full mass grading plan set that was reviewed and approved. But again, we didn't give them approval for a particular pad location or configuration or size. I mean, that's site plan, that's what we do, that's what the planning commission does, so. Yeah. Yep.
So do we have a rule that if it's been graded and nothing's built on it for, say, a year, that we require them to put some sort of plan or something?
Yeah, so they have actually a permit from the state, a land disturbance permit that comes through us. It's a state permit that requires vegetative cover after a certain period of time. I can't remember exactly what it is, but
at some point, if this thing lays fallow.
Yeah, we would have a hammer,
something on it
yeah,
to keep the dust down.
to get some cover planted.
I feel good about that.
Yeah, at least it's something.
Back in agricultural.
Well, at least hay it or something.
These site plans that we're gonna get, is it just gonna be on this size paper?
Yeah, probably smaller.
It don't work.
That doesn't work, that's all folks does. We need big.
We do have requirements for that we'll make sure that are met.
We used to get big paper.
We used to.
That little plan that you gave us looked like an electronic schematic that Dan used to show me. It's like, oh my gosh, what is all that stuff?
And then on some of these larger packages that we're gonna be seeing and reviewing, is that something we're gonna see a little more in advance, or is it still gonna come on like a Thursday?
Well, I'm trying to get them out on Thursday, now this time I got out Friday morning.
I just know that the scale of this is not, a little building that we're gonna be looking at, it's a 1 acre site. So the size and scale of what we're reviewing is gonna adequately review it, it's gonna take more time than volunteers have on a, 3-day, 4-day notice. If possible.
Yeah, I think,
You're seeing stuff
I think it's
rolling in.
possible. As long, we can get it to you as soon as we get it.
Yeah.
With the understanding that we're still reviewing it, there might be changes.
Right.
I don't see why we couldn't do that.
Tell the applicant they're gonna have to answer to Todd if they're slow getting it in.
No, I mean, it's just,
Easy as the hammer.
it's tough to take, for
Yes,
people
No,
to take
that's-
their time and review it adequately so that we can make proper decisions and ask the correct questions. You don't have enough time.
I don't see
That's a
why we
good
couldn't
point,
do
Todd.
that.
Yeah, we certainly can send it out, I guess my only concern is that, we're gonna be reviewing it, you're gonna review it, we're gonna send comments to the engineer, and then you might send us comments, and I just don't wanna make sure we don't miss something, or.
Well, you guys ultimately
or
have
we're
the
sending
final
you
say until
duplicate
we come to
comments.
the meeting. We're not gonna be sending you comments, I don't think, prior to the meeting. Just
Well,
wanna be able
I
to look
wouldn't,
at it.
I wouldn't discourage that, though. I mean, if you're looking at it and have a question or a comment about something, get it to us.
Right.
If we can fix it before the meeting, that's all the better.
I'm not trying to say we need it.
No,
like
well,
a month in
look, this
advance,
is,
but-
we're doing a lot of stuff we've never done with anything else.
Exactly.
Panasonic is a unicorn, right?
Right.
I don't mind, as long as it's legal and appropriate and is consistent with what, the process that we've laid out, there's nothing that says we can't put a little more effort toward a massive project like this.
I mean, I guess you can submit the plan to us when you guys get them, but then just send us the staff comments.
I don't wanna see them until you guys have commented on it personally.
Well, yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what
I-
we see the comment.
But your point's a good one. If Thursday's better than Friday, at least give it another day, and
Yeah.
you can do Wednesday, it'd be even
So
better.
usually what happens is they submit them a month in advance, 4 weeks. We take the first 2 weeks to generate comments. We get those comments to the applicant. They have a week to 10 days to make those revisions, get them back into us, and that's about the day that you get it.
Right.
So it's something like that.
Maybe you could adjust your timeline just a little bit to give these technical expertise people a little bit more chance to look at it too. Now, to me, it doesn't make any difference, but to these people that really are deep into that stuff, if you could adjust your timeline and get it out for them Wednesday, because they've got lives to
I'm not
do.
trying to say you gotta
I was
work
just gonna
super
throw out, there is
hard.
the Milburn rule where I'm talking to Justin Thursday afternoon, saying, hey, can we change this?
Yeah. Well, we understand that there's things that change, but, you know, we can look at the bulk of it. If
Yeah.
you get a PDF and we can look at it, then that's.
Well, the
Yeah,
downside
there's
of
no reason
not,
that we can't send them to you. I mean, I know what you're saying, right, and that's kind of my concern
Yeah.
is, you know, you look at that and you see a few things you think need to be fixed, and we're sending those comments to the consultant, and I just wanna make sure we're not, you know, cross-pollinating comments.
We're not bringing different plans to the.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, I think it could really mess things up for the planning commissioners to interject ourselves in the review or comment process. But do you guys take digital submittals?
Yeah.
So is there any way we can have access to that upload spot?
Well, I guess that's what I had in mind when I said we'll give this to you as soon as we get them. I'd rather not require the applicant to initially submit 10 full, prints, but if we had a link
I would just,
digitally.
I mean, if we could maybe get a little preview, this is Panasonic's coming next time.
Yeah.
And, at least we could go take a look at it.
Yeah, I had a digital submittal in mind.
that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Just something you could look through, read the notes, read the things,
Yeah.
and have an idea what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to say that I could sit down on Saturday and Sunday and fully review these plans to be prepared to come in on Tuesday to come to our meetings that we have. But can't say that I have that time block fully. But if I had opportunities here and there to read through the notes on a PDF or something, that's.
But I guess I don't wanna take away the city job.
No, I don't know if there's, maybe I'm not trying to create work, but we got a lot coming in the future. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
planning commission portal. Downloads and auto-populates in, and we can go in if we wanna look at it. If you don't wanna look at it, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But maybe it's something.
That's a good idea.
Some way we can access through the website or something.
Yeah, we do a lot of
It's just-
stuff with Google Drive.
Yeah, it's like online plan room or something like that, but we have an access login. If we wanna look, we can. If not, then we show up on Tuesday. Just a thought, because
It's good conversation.
it's not only gonna happen next month. I mean, we're looking at this for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it'll be big stuff.
It might really heat up the number of items because
We expect it
with
will.
Panasonic's there might be a lot more people.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the downside of not giving enough time to review it is that in good conscience, it's hard to approve something you haven't had enough time to review, so I totally get that. But from at least my view on this, I'm a volunteer and I'm relying on city staff to do this analysis and present us with their analysis for it. So I don't want to step on their toes with that. That's me. I expect when it comes here, we've got these issues that we need to talk about and we can do
But
uh,
it's good to have another set of eyes
I
looking
agree.
at it, and that just gives us extra confidence that, I know it makes me feel good when these guys down here are saying, yeah, this, and they're bringing up points, and then you bring up legal points sometimes that some of us aren't aware of, and it just makes
I
me
agree.
feel better making a vote on that. So I see where you guys, and I think the access to the portal would be a really good move for you guys that have, and because we are volunteers. He's got little kids at home still, so he's busy with them, and it's nice to have a few extra days to do that. Agreed. So there you go.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Well, any news? What's happening over here? Any news? No?
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Yeah. Nothing that I'm aware of.
So Bob, what's the name of your vest? As I was sitting here.
Oh, you got one of those from PFI?